All right, welcome in Cowboys Nation to this morning's episode. And rookie minicamp has just concluded over the weekend. And it's really not a time for clips or highlights, but it is a time for first impressions. So instead of speculating, I brought somebody in that was there, boots on the ground. Let's get into it.
I want you to put the word out there. We back up.
Welcome in Joe Hoyt of Dallas Morning News. Or better yet, let me do this.
Tell him something, Joe.
I love that drop. I was just telling you, I love it. What's up with you, Joe?
It's perfect. It is perfect. Shout out to Jesse Holly for that one, for that idea. It's it's funny. Like, I genuinely still, like, I'll be walking, and it happens in Oxnard, and it'll definitely happen again this year, where, like, I'll be walking and all of a sudden I hear, tell him something, Joe. And I'm like, what? Like, still hasn't really kind of resonated with me, but it's been a cool calling card for sure.
So Joe was down there. Joe Hoyt, Dallas Morning News, joining the show, was down at rookie minicamp. And before we get into everything that we saw, man, you almost had to suit up. You got to let me know how that interaction was with Barham. For those who don't know, maybe Joe can explain the story here. But Barham almost told Joe Hoyt to suit up and get out there on the football field.
Did you ever run in Oklahoma drill?
I mean, you can find out. We can.
Right now?
We can do it. Yeah.
And honestly, this kind of goes into, this is an immediate segue into kind of one of the takeaways from rookie minicamp, to be honest. So one of the things that really stuck with me from the draft was when Brian Schottenheimer was kind of going through some of the players, and he's like, Jayshon Barham, this is a guy that, you want in an Oklahoma drill. And for those who are not familiar with what an Oklahoma drill is, it's kind of been banned. Like, people, like, teams don't do it anymore. But it's something that, like, my generation grew up doing, where and there's variations to it, but basically it's like a very isolated little area on a football field, and sometimes there's offensive lineman, defensive lineman, running back, and linebacker going against each other. Sometimes it's just a running back on his back and a linebacker on his back. They flip up, they go, and it's best man wins, gladiator style. Very, very physical. That's why it's been kind of outlawed.
Right.
So when Schottenheimer said that, I was like, okay, I'm going to ask Jayshon about this. So when I told him, like, hey, Jayshon, this is what he said. When was the last time you did it? Because it's been kind of canceled. And he goes, well, you and I could do one right now. And, like, usually, like, people are like, oh, haha, you could do one right now. And I even said, like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And he just stared back, and he just, like, stone cold. And even Nick Harris chimes in. He's like, yo, he did play safety. And I was like, yeah, man, I had those D3 offers, Jayshon. And he goes, come on, let's go. Let's go.
That just goes to show. I mean, I know it's just we're playing around and jokes and whatnot, but there is a different demeanor, aura, if you will, with Jayshon Barham, compared to some other guys that came in over the years at that position.
For sure. I mean, like, one of the things that he talked about was, like, what players he idolizes or models his game after. And he said Ray Lewis, Azeez Al-Shaair, and then he said Fred Warner, and, like, and then he was asked, like, okay, well, like, how do you want to be all three of them? And he's like, yeah, I probably consider myself, though, the hitter right now. The guy that wants to take your head off, like Azeez. And he's like, but I would love to be more of a Fred Warner one day too. So, like, if you want to know what you're getting in Jayshon Barham, the fact that he really wanted, I think, to do an Oklahoma drill with me genuinely, and then that kind of description, I think, tells you all you need to know. And one little funny thing, I was talking to one of the guys from Cowboys PR, and he's like, hey, we should do this. Like, you should do an Oklahoma drill with him. Like, we'll sell tickets. And I was like, yeah, all proceeds will go to charity and my medical benefits.
Right. Who thought of that idea? You crazy?
It was, hey, man, I'll tell you what, like, we started doing betting odds about whether I'd end up in the hospital or not. I think I'd be okay. I think it would be bad, but I think I'd be okay. There's people who don't believe that.
Joe, let me tell you something right now. Well, if you were to challenge an NFL player, they're not taking it easy on you, Joe. They're going to try to run through you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And like, did you ever see the show Pros versus Joes?
Yes, I have.
And what? Yeah, so, like, I always wanted to do that one day, and then they cut the show off before I was old enough to be a Joe, even though great show, though.
Well, before we get into any of the other names, let's kind of level set here about what this actually is, all right? Rookie minicamp. It can be misinterpreted real quick because of, hey, we're all excited, right? You're getting the new guys out there. We're looking for highlights. We're looking for clips. We're looking for all that. But when you're out at rookie minicamp, what are you actually looking for, even though it's not a full-blown camp type of environment?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I feel bad almost for guys like Zach Switzer, for example, who are, coming in as on a tryout basis. because in those 2 days, there's not a lot of chance to actually show your stuff in terms of being a tryout player at rookie minicamp, right? Because most of rookie minicamp is about getting the playbook. It's about starting doing installs, and it's really about they did a lot of conditioning this time actually, which is something they don't normally do.
I heard.
Yeah, I mean, even Shoddy said that some players puked. I didn't see it, but still, I mean, I think that's kind of a testament to the conditioning work they were doing. But rookie minicamp is a lot of just not only us getting first impressions, but I think coaches getting first impressions
Yeah.
too. They're doing a lot of individual drills. And I believe something, I've heard this many times, that like NFL teams don't really know what they have until they're inside their building, right? And I know with 30 visits, you can still kind of get a sense of things, but until you're actually out on the grass, like they don't know exactly what they're getting. Or sometimes players put on their, best selves during the draft process, and then all of a sudden, when it comes to actually learning the install, learning the playbook, and things are handed to them, sometimes it doesn't, go great. And I think that that's one of the things that not only that we're looking for as reporters, but looking, that the coaches are looking for too. And you're still able to get some of that. There's no team drills really. They do a lot of special team stuff. You saw Tyron Montgomery, go viral, for doing a special teams drill. And like, I think that's a lot of it too, because they're trying to identify which player might surprise them. But I mean, the big takeaway from what I saw was mostly seeing Caleb Downs and Christian Parker together. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Christian Parker said something, Sky, that stuck with me when he was talking about Caleb Downs. And he said his brain is connected to his feet.
Yeah.
And like, when you hear that quote, like, it's a great description, right? Then you kind of see it out there. And like, I'm not trying to make too much of it. Like, the balance that he has, and while he's balancing to like run this way and also pointing another way and then cutting back to like, come down the alley as a nickel, like, just in individual drills, like that description was so perfect because you can see it.
Let's zoom in and stay right there with Caleb Downs, because that's where I was going to go with this. And the way you were talking about that, it reminds me of a running back, right? Like the balance of a running back, especially those like 5'9", 5'10" backs who are thick thighs, center of gravity. They can get low and they can maintain contact balance. He kind of has a little bit of that to his game, and I'm glad you said that it's something that you guys saw out there, because I was going to ask you. People are impressed, not just, the coaches, but the players. Devin Moore, he came out and said, man, this dude is already having a bit of an impact on me. So aside from the balance aspect of it, and you can talk about more of the relationship with Parker and Downs, what is standing out, or what stood out to you this past weekend when you were watching that? Because I know everybody's eyeballs were focused on Caleb Downs.
Yeah, like, so the one thing that Schottenheimer keeps talking about is that Caleb Downs has an aura to him, and he has a gravitational pull, is kind of what he was talking about, right? And it makes sense. I mean, the kid was a 4-year starter in high school in Georgia, in that hotbed of recruiting. Which, if you know that, I mean, there's a lot of good players that come out of there. Freshman All-American, sophomore All-American, junior All-American at Alabama, Ohio State. Like, this guy comes with pelts on the wall, and I think that was very evident. Like, I think the best thing I could say just about the first impression from Caleb Downs is that it looks so easy. Everything looks so, and not like he was like taking it easy.
Right.
Everything just looks so professional with him. The way, even from the moment he walks, jogs out on the field, it's a very business-like thing. He's, one of the last guys out there. Him and Christian Parker were getting hands-on work, after practice ended. Doing things. Caleb Downs just looks the part. And that's one thing you heard from Christian Parker. You heard from Brian Schottenheimer. You talked to people in the building. That's the other thing kind of rookie minicamp's good for, is just talking to people and getting a sense of things. And they're like, oh yeah, no, this guy has lived up to every expectation we've had from rookie minicamp. And you brought it up. I mean, Devin Moore, when I asked him just about Caleb Downs and just, how it's been to work with him, I think I asked him. We asked a lot of questions. Someone asked him. And he's like, yeah, he already knows the playbook. And like, one little grain of salt, yeah, it's rookie minicamp. I don't think they're getting the full playbook, right?
Right.
What they're going to be doing in week 16 or week 17, maybe against the Green Bay Packers, right? Or something like that. But the fact that he already knows what that stuff and came in and is working at multiple positions, it's not a surprise. I did a story, before the draft or after the draft, where Caleb Downs knew the playbooks of teams that he was going to visit when he was a high school recruit. He knew their playbooks. When he was in college, When he was thinking about where he was going to go, he did the same thing. This draft process, he said that he knew the defenses of 5 to 6 defenses in the top 12 picks, knowing that he might end up there. And when he talked about the Cowboys, it wasn't the Cowboys defense. He knew the Eagles defense.
Right.
And that's because Jim Knowles had a good relationship with Christian Parker. So did Matt Chieri, the safeties coach at Ohio State. Both of those guys went to Philadelphia to know the defense. So when you saw that clip of Caleb Downs saying with Matt Patricia, look, the Eagles, and Matt Patricia goes, yeah, you know it. He literally knows it. So he got the playbook the day after he was drafted. And it doesn't surprise me that he already has that thing down to a T.
Yeah, you talked about Christian Parker, mentioning that the assistant coach came down and visited him. That relationship that they seem to be forming already is what stuck out to me. I know it's just pictures for somebody like me, but you were down there. And then the interview. Christian Parker's first football, like real football interview after a practice or what have you, I thought it was fire, Joe. I did. I thought he gave some good nuggets. He said some good things in there. And he alluded to this being our defense. And I think Caleb Downs is going to play a major factor in that. And with all due respect to a Cooper DeJean, who is a fantastic player in his own right, he's probably going to be moved around in that way. But I just think there's going to be some versatility with Caleb being able to play at 3 levels as opposed to a corner who usually does 2 levels. But it just feels like Parker and Downs are going to be tied to the hip here. That interview and just the interactions you've seen at Christian Parker. What are some of your takeaways from your first at bat at seeing him on field?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I actually wasn't at his initial press conference because I was in Japan. So this was, and I met him at the combine and we talked there, but like This was the first press conference of me sitting in there, and yeah, very impressive. And he's someone that, he's very to the point, but it's a good point usually to your point. Talking about our defense and. When I think of Caleb Downs, I think, you talk about the versatility. I think they're going to have multiple guys with that type of versatility. I think you're going to see a lot of different looks. You're going to see Jalen Thompson moving around a lot. You're going to see PJ Locke coming off the bench and come in and move around. I think they're going to do a lot of different things. So Christian Parker is impressive, man. It's the same way that I appreciate Clayton Adams in terms of from a reporter standpoint, where you ask him something and it's not like oh yeah, we really like the guy. It's like, oh yeah, we really like the guy because, Malachi Lawrence can turn his toe a certain way and he can kind of get around the edge the way we like. And, we still want to do this for him. Or, hey, Jayshon Barham, yeah, we're going to play him at inside linebacker, but here's why we're going to play him at inside linebacker, because he did this, this, this. And we think that he can do this here, even though we still have to go see it. Right. So, the best thing you can ask of a coach in terms of a media standpoint is someone who will actually explain things and answer questions.
Yeah.
Christian Parker will do that too. And sorry, I'm rambling, but one other note on Caleb Downs, you talk about Cooper DeJean, and I do think that's a good comp. The guy I keep coming back to with Caleb Downs, I think this year, I think Devin Witherspoon in Seattle. And a little bit different defenses, but the way that they use him, that's how I can't get Caleb Downs right off the bat in my head. Caleb Downs can be a guy that plays truly all over, and I think he obviously has the mental capabilities to do it. But that's the guy I kind of keep going back to as what Caleb Downs could be in year 1 for the Cowboys.
Yeah, he's going to be the player we're hyper focused on. Christian Parker is going to be the coach we're hyper focused on. And real quick, I'm not sure if you were able to kind of get a gauge on the rest of the staff, because I think just as impressive as Christian Parker is, the staff he put together seems to be really impressive. Did any of those guys, the Ryan Smiths, the Ansleys, the Rebays, Scott Simmons, did Marcus Dixon, did any of those guys kind of stand out to you in the first time you got a chance to see them?
Yeah, and every assistant, it's not like a full 90-man roster, right? So they have the ability to do this, but every assistant was very hands-on. Ryan Smith was very hands-on with Devin Moore. Scott Simons was very hands-on with Jayshon Barham and Justin Barron and other, guys like that, right? And, Derek Ansley, it's funny, Derek Ansley is a lot bigger than you'd expect for a safety or a secondary, passing game coordinator. You think of guys like me, right? Or Ryan Smith, who's, probably 6 foot, right? 5'11". Derek Ansley's huge. That's just a funny thing just seeing in person for him for the first time. But yeah, hands-on, is the best way I could describe it. And pretty concrete, and there was no lapses, no easy jogging. He was very methodical of where they wanted to go next. I'm curious to see how that translates to training camp for sure. The other thing on that note too, Christian Parker was very hands-on, like in not only with secondary guys. We saw him out, at one point spending extensive time with Jay Sean Barham, showing him exactly what he wants, which makes sense considering that they look at him as like a Zach Bond type. So he knows, and he worked with Zach Bond a lot. When I talked with him at the Pro Bowl, he said Christian Parker and I worked hand in hand a lot, and you could see that with Christian Parker and Jay Sean Barham as well.
Such a great nugget because I think I've tried to explain this when we played the Eagles a lot throughout the show, throughout the year on the show. That second level is really important in regards to coverage. So don't get it twisted. While Christian Parker is a DB guy, he is going to put some pressure on that second level to be where they need to be in this coverage scheme. So that's a very good nugget right there. Got to shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. And Prize Picks just dropped their season-long picks, or what they call NFL season. And what makes this tough, instead of just game to game, you're picking more or less on a player's stats for the entire year. We're talking passing touchdowns, yards, all of it. And the best part, it's still simple. You pick a couple players, choose more or less on their projections, lock in your lineup before the season starts, and now you're riding with that take all the way through the year. So let's do that right now. I'm going to give you all 3 season-long picks that I'm looking at for passing touchdowns. First up, Dak Prescott. More or less 27.5 passing touchdowns for the 2026 season. Smash the more here. Easy money. George Pickens is returning, and as long as Dak stays healthy, he's a lock for more than 27 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, more or less 21.5 passing touchdowns. This one is a little more trickier since Daniels is coming off that injury or a bunch of injuries, has a new offensive coordinator, but I think they're going to have to lean on his arm a lot, so I'm going to go more here for Jaden Daniels on 21.5 passing touchdowns. And finally, you got Jalen Hurts, more or less 21.5 passing touchdowns. For A.J. Brown's sake, it better be more. But who knows if he's even going to stay on this roster for the entire season. Plus, you got Saquon Barkley still there, another offensive coordinator change, a bunch of drama surrounding his ability. I'm taking the less. It's only one season removed. He threw for just 18 touchdown passes, so it's not that far-fetched, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it, my 3 season-long predictions. You can download the Prize Pick app today and use promo code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 in lineups. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Who are the other rookies though that kind of looked the part immediately? If you want to go with like movement or physicality or whatever, you can't really hit or anything like that, or that first off the bus type situation. But who looked the part to you, Joe?
I'll tell you, man, Jay Sean Barham off the bus is impressive. Like that guy is all of 6'4", 250.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a reason why if we didn't Oklahoma drill, it wouldn't end well for your boy. But he's also just like big, like
yeah, he's bigger than the normal backers that we've had over the years.
100%. He's like, you think of like Kenneth Murray, right? And like Kenneth Murray, for all his struggles last year, like when you look at the body type, that is a modern linebacker, right? Yeah. He's fast. He's that looks like him. Jay Sean Barham is significantly bigger than Kenneth Murray. Like for a comp, significantly bigger than Jack Sanborn or Logan Wilson. Like this is a huge linebacker. So that's a guy that stands out from an impressive, just off the bus standpoint. The offensive line was deep down there, so like we're like on one side of the field, the offensive line's on the other side. But all I've heard from like an athletic standpoint, and you see it too, and I think there's some room to grow. Drew Sheldon is very athletic, very light on his feet. He looks, if you're looking, he could potentially, they're going to work him at guard too. But if you're looking at a potential Terrence Steele replacement down the road and what they want from an athletic right tackle, someone that can get out in space and move, like I think that is probably the ideal path for Drew Sheldon. That's something to keep an eye on. And Devin Moore is smooth and tall and long. The only thing with him is, they wanted him to kind of get lower in terms of his back pedals and things, out of that. But I think in terms of the athlete there's a lot to like. Obviously, the medical stuff has got to get addressed. And he said, the first thing he's going to do when he meets all the veterans is asking for their recovery plans, their rehabs, what they do. I nearly told him just go talk to Javonte Williams. But that's something he says he plans to do. So in terms of like those first impressions, I just think Jayshon Barham is the biggest linebacker I've seen the Cowboys have in a while.
Maybe this tie into what we just talked about, but every year, every offseason, every OTA, minicamp, there's that guy. There's a guy that stands out, or there's a guy that maybe not everybody is seeing right now, but we have to have some foresight. Who's that name that fans aren't talking about yet, or maybe they are, but we're going to be talking about more come August, just based off the little bit that you've seen?
It's going to be Malachi Lawrence, and I know it's a first round pick. What do you mean? Like, you're not going to talk about him? He does get overshadowed because of Caleb Downs,
Yep.
and and it was so funny because Sky, the day after we do press conferences with and meet and greets with the first round pick, right? Well, because they had two, they did them back to back. And I'll be honest, like it felt like we had Caleb Downs first, which had a bunch of hoopla, doing, getting his boots done and all that stuff and getting the press conference. And then we had Malachi Lawrence, where like it felt like the second taste of the ice cream, right? Where you're like, oh, that first taste. And then you're like, yeah, the second one's pretty good too. Like he does get overshadowed. And I'll tell you this about Malachi Lawrence. This is someone that if they got wiped out at 12, in terms of if Caleb Downs wasn't there, which was a very distinct possibility, they would have considered taking Malachi Lawrence at 12. There was another guy that they talked about taking at 12, and they were going back and forth. They would have taken him probably at 12 if or considered it, and they would have taken him at 20. And I know CJ Allen is a name that was thrown out there too. Even last night we saw it in that documentary. I think it was there was a clear difference in their mind ultimately on the board when it came to Malachi Lawrence versus CJ Allen. There's a lot of excitement about him, Sky, and the reason being, this is a guy that hasn't harnessed all his potential yet, and he knows it. Like his best asset is he's a 4.5 40-yard dash guy, right? Who ran a 1.59 10-yard split. For an edge rusher, a 1.5 10-yard split is very fast.
At 6'5", by the way, 250 plus.
He's huge. That's another guy off the bus that's huge, right? You watch his film. This is a guy that doesn't harness that yet, and he admits it. He's like, yeah, I false step. I've hesitated. I haven't utilized this yet. So the fact that right away they have BT Jordan doing little scientific details on how to harness that, in terms of, hey, you got to put 70% of your weight on this foot and 30% on the back foot. Your toe has to be a certain way when you're lined up. Like the fact that they're doing these little details, or they're putting little pass rush or like dummy drill things like on his foot so that he can't false step and he has to go forward. I think that they see this guy as someone with a lot of juice that they think they can get the squeeze out of.
Yeah, that's a good one, because he's somebody that I think if the boom booms, this could be huge. And the Cowboys need it really, because they don't have that type of athleticism at the position. Last year, you could argue that was like Fowler, if you will, but he's a veteran. He probably doesn't have the same step, but they need him to develop. And having a guy like BT Jordan helps tremendously in kind of fixing the nuances of his game. And I love that he is open to that, right? Like there's that constructive criticism that, hey man, I got to be better with this. So that's kind of cool to hear that he's spoken that way.
Yeah, he cited it on his own. He's like, yeah, did you know that BT Jordan in the Broncos had the most sacks last year? Like he brought that up.
Yeah.
So like he knows that like the guy that he's learning these nuances from comes with pelts on the wall as well. And he knows that if he can get the speed part, the initial first step part figured out, to your points, guy, this is someone they don't have. Like Donovan Ezraku's quick. He's definitely quick, but he's not as fast, straight line fast, as a guy like Malachi Lawrence if he can harness it.
Yeah, that's no disrespect to Donovan Ezraku, who's a fine athlete in his own right, but this guy's just in a different tier from an athletic standpoint. Size as well. Donovan Ezraku, a lot of people were like, he doesn't even look like an edge rusher. He looked 6'2", he was like 230 something, 240 or what have you. This guy's 6'5", 250. This is a totally different body size for this specific scheme, by the way. So I think it just works, and hopefully it works out. Last one for you. After being out there all weekend, talking to people, you're in the locker rooms, you're talking to the players, there's some things you're hearing on the side. You know how you guys are. You see and hear things that you guys don't even report, right? If you had to sum up the entire weekend, how would you do it, Joe?
Yeah, I think the entire weekend, the big takeaway, and we kind of knew this from free agency, Christian Parker does have his tools. And I know, you could talk about Shiaj Pete, who was amazing, the undrafted free agent. You could talk about Drew Sheldon and his future. This is mostly defensive oriented. It's been defensive oriented since, this offseason because they had to do a transformation. And you can see Christian Parker's influence on all these picks, right? And all these types of guys. And you can see the versatility aspect. Obviously, with Jayshon Barham or Barham, he's someone that could play off the edge in a nickel package or walk down when needed, while also playing inside linebacker. Obviously, Caleb Downs is Caleb Downs. Even Devin Moore is someone that I think that there could be some flexibility in terms of what he does. He's tall, he's rangy. It wouldn't surprise me if they could move him to safety. I'm not saying that's the plan, but
Right.
there's versatility there too. I think just in them talking with Christian Parker as well, he has what he needs to turn this defense around. I believe in terms of what his vision was and how they fulfilled it. Obviously, you would have liked maybe a more pronounced starter green dot inside linebacker. That's the one thing that they're missing, and that's the one thing that's more of a projection versus a placement. They're going to have a lot of guys compete for that job as the green dot. Even Jalen Thompson was something they threw in there as a potential. So I think that's the thing I keep coming back to is Christian Parker had a vision. They came in and said, we got to wipe this thing clean. If you go back to the day one starters of last year compared to what the day one starters of this year is going to be, night and day. It's impressive. So they did a complete transformation. Caleb Downs is. I keep going back to this guy. I think Caleb Downs is Christian Parker on the field. I think if you were to make Christian Parker, if Christian Parker sat down on Madden and created a My Player, what would Christian Parker do to make a My Player? It would be Caleb Downs. It would be the versatile safety who's incredibly intelligent. The one thing, even in stretching lines, we saw those two talking. I can't even imagine just the football, and maybe they were talking life, or maybe they were talking something simple. But when those two are kind of nerding out and talking football, I would love to be a fly on the wall, and I can't imagine just how beyond basic those conversations are.
I was joking about that. Can you imagine in the meeting rooms? There's going to be a lot of meetings, just those two guys. How Dak and Shoddy that's basically going to be the Dak and Shoddy of the defense. Can you imagine a savant like a Caleb Downs who's an intellect as well, and then Christian Parker? We know he's an intellect in the same room. Man, it could. I think personally there could be some innovation that could happen out of this whole thing on that side of the ball between Downs, Parker, and his staff, and the fact that he's adamant that this is our defense. Just don't be shocked if we see some things that, this is different. Mike McDonald type of situation. This is different. Maybe teams will start copying what the Cowboys do, but that's a projection. But still,
no doubt. And I'll say this is kind of like one wrap up. At this point in the offseason, we're about to go into a dead period, right? Yeah. And then training camp's going to come up. There's going to be, fair or not, and it's probably a lot of it's R driven, what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be high expectations on both Caleb Downs and Christian Parker. There's going to be pressure, I think, to be honest, to deliver something that is different, vastly different from what they had last year. That there's going to be pressure on Caleb Downs to step in right away, and there's going to be pressure on Christian Parker to make this defense a top 20 defense right off the bat in year one. And so they're not going to run from it, knowing those two, but there is a lot of pressure on those two, I think, to be a little bit of what the expectations are kind of streamlining them to be.
When you're in Dallas, there's going to be 30 years of it on your back, especially when you are part of a side of the football that just can't consistently play at a high level and doesn't consistently play at that level in the playoffs either. So, yeah, get ready, Downs, and get ready, Parker. But I believe they'll be able to handle it, man. Ladies and gentlemen.
Tell them something, Joe.
He told us a whole lot. If you missed this one, you are missing out. I'm telling you right now. Good stuff here, Joe. Appreciate you for taking some time out in the morning. Your busy schedule. I know you got some more things you got to do down there at the Star with the team. So I'll let you get going. But once again, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, Sky, always a pleasure to talk with ball with you, man.
This can't be the last time, by the way. Got to get you back. Hey, by the way, make sure your insurance is straight. Make sure your chin strap is buckled and all that good stuff. Because if you really are going to do that.
Yeah, it would be quick. It would be a first round knockout. But it would be a lot of fun. It would be great for content, honestly. I hate to be that guy. It would be.
It would. All right, Cowboys Nation, for Joe Hoyt, I'm Skywalker Still. This has been Skywalker in the Morning. We out. Peace.
Skywalker in the morning, shine bright. Cowboys talk, we keep it tight. Friends takes no filter, pure and right. From the start to the field, we ignite. No lies, no games, we stay true. Every move we make